there's a rethinking in the Pakistan Fauj that they may need to move out of Pindi because it's too close to the border.
India has an adequate arsenal of weapons to take on Pakistan right across its depth. So we are absolutely capable from our borders or even in depth where we can take on the entire Pakistan. And the GHQ can move from Rawalpindi to KPK or wherever they want to move, but they are all within range.
Okay.
So they'll have to really find a deep hole. Yeah.
How the Army Air Defence thwarted all the missile attacks and drone attacks on the Golden Temple specifically.
The Golden Temple hierarchy realized there was possibly a threat when it was explained to them. They allowed us to deploy guns to secure to protect the Golden Temple. Lights were switched off so that we could clearly visualize the drones as they were coming in, and that gave us a greater clarity in the sky, because as and when you saw the light, you knew what to engage.
Rahul Gandhi tweeted, informing Pakistan at the start of our attack was a crime. Does the Indian defense mechanism ever tell the adversary, tell the enemy that this is what we're going to strike?
For any conflict to be successful, a surprise is the greatest element. And the very fact that, we got 100 terrorists, if not more, in their respective places where the camps were. I mean, that itself gives you an answer.
This episode is powered by easemytrip.com. Namaste Jai Hind, you're watching or listening to another edition of the NI podcast with Smita Prakash. I'm joined in this conversation with my colleague Ajit Dubey. Just a reminder that we are not using any sensitive information which can be used by India's adversaries. My guest today is Lieutenant General Sumer Ivan D'Cunha, currently serving as the Director General of the Army Air Defence, AAD. Thank you, General D'Cunha, for coming to the podcast. Couple of things that Ajit and I want to discuss with you. But first, of course, because everything is so topical these days, we'll begin with today's news. I think I'll let Ajit explain as to what happened here. And if you could tell me about this, about what our adversary targets and how we respond to it.
Pakistan Army has no legitimate targets to strike inside India, nor does it have the courage or capability to stand up to Indian armed forces face to face. Hence, it uses terrorism as a national policy and resorts to unmanned aerial weapons launched from its own soil. Drones and long-range missiles were launched and fired from his own territory, which were his mainstay. Indian military installations, civilian population centers, including innocent ladies and children, were also not spared and were considered as legitimate targets by the Pakistan military. He has even targeted religious places specifically, a case in point being the Golden Temple located in Amritsar, which is internationally renowned and a place of faith for everybody. It saw a surfeit of drone and missile attacks, which were thwarted bravely by our Army AD gunners. The Indian Armed Forces and Army Air Defence gunners will continue to defeat all his designs and thwart all aerial threats always. Thank you.
Sir, this was the GOC 15 Infantry Div in Amritsar, and we had interviewed him yesterday, and we were told that how the Army Air Defence thwarted all the missile attacks and drone attacks on the Golden Temple specifically, along with the other places that they had targeted. So this is a big feat, sir. Like you have been, like the Army Air Defence has been the main obstacle between Indian cities and important places, and the Army Air Defence has thwarted all the major attacks that took place on our cities. So,
well, it's very interesting that you bring this out as what has happened yesterday. But fortunately, we visualized what he was capable of doing. And hence, realizing that he would target it, because he had no legitimate targets across the border.
Yes, explain this to people who don't understand what legitimate targets are, because we saw the soundbite. India at this stage, the legitimate targets were the terror bases.
Yeah.
So what does legitimate target for Pakistan mean?
So he had no legitimate targets. So in order for him to, he was more interested in creating confusion, chaos internally, and hence we visualized that he would target our civil population and our religious places of fame. And hence it is very nice, while only Karthik Shashadri has only covered one part of the story, it was very nice that the head Granthi of the Golden Temple allowed us to deploy our guns. And it is possibly for the first time in maybe many, many years where they switched off the Golden Temple lights for the first time, so that we could see the drone coming. I think that's what, the Golden Temple hierarchy realized there was possibly a threat when it was explained to them. They allowed us to deploy guns to secure to protect a national monument of international fame, which is visited by so many hundreds and thousands of people every day. And hence these guns were deployed and the Golden Temple lights were switched off, so that we could clearly visualize the drones as they were coming in. And that gave us a greater clarity in the sky, because as and when you saw the light, you knew what to engage. So
also, we've come, like you're saying, that the lights were switched off by the Granthis and by the management of the Golden Temple. We've come a long way since 1984, and all that propaganda that the so-called Khalistanis do outside of India, because in India nobody believes it, but outside of India about our Sikh places of worship. Look at the faith they have in the Indian Armed Forces and how they stood cheek by jowl and as one team to defend the Harmandir Sahib.
Yeah. It's amazing to know that, in all our border towns, not to take it away from the rest of India, but in our border towns, retired ex-servicemen from Punjab, Haryana, parts of Jammu, they were prepared to come out of retirement and they were saying, what can we do to help? I think that's huge. I mean, if you got the local population on your side, wanting to fight side by side with you with whatever capability they had, and some of them were well retired, and we had 80 gunners coming in like this, that what can we do to help you? I think it only tells you that whether it's Punjab or it's Haryana or Jammu and Kashmir or any other parts of India, this actually rallied a lot of patriotism, especially among our ex-servicemen fraternity from the border states.
Right.
I think it speaks volumes about our national character.
Also, the first aid, one, I need to know about the air defense mechanisms which were used in and around that area. One, that. And the second is our attack out there in just 23 minutes, how we managed to get our targets on the first day.
You're talking with respect specific to?
When we targeted the terror bases, it was finished, the attack was finished in 23 days. Then when they responded, our air defense mechanisms, how we stopped both.
So, it's like this, that the Nagorno-Karabakh Azerbaijan clash, Russian-Ukraine clash, and even to some extent the Israeli current conflict going on, taught us about the huge capability that drones have. And, we realized that Pakistan, by virtue of its back-end support from Turkey and maybe a northern adversary as well, had a plethora of drones. And we also knew that, in order to take on an effective air defense integrated system that we have, like the Army and the Air Force are integrated in this case, he would have to saturate us. So if you see his concept of employment, he would first send in low altitude, cheaper drones in large numbers to saturate your radars. And they would also force you to open up your radars. So I think it's very important that the army looked at, not emitting, so that we didn't give out our positions. Because the moment you gave out your emitter position, his next line of drones would come to hit the radar.
So what do you do then? You
switch it on at the appropriate time.
Okay.
So you switch it on when you realize that the target is within your gun range. You switch on the radar intermittently, slew your guns and engage the target. But if you continuously emit, that's what the drone is wanting you to do. Saturate your screen and then bring in someone from the rear, an armed drone, and then hit your radar as a kamikaze drone. So I think that the training that we did, actually we anticipated this, and you won't believe that about maybe on the 26th, 27th and 28th, we did a simulation exercise at the behest of our army chief in the border areas, where we simulated drone attacks on the weapon system.
So sir, April 26th, 27th, you carried out an exercise of a drone attack from Pakistan.
Yeah, it was not from the border, but it was internal, on the
Internal.
border.
Okay.
But we actually wanted to our gunners and our operators to actually hone their skill and see how do you detect. So we started off at 5:30 in the morning, if maybe 26 for the first day. Yeah. So we started 5:30 in the morning, where we had multiple drones coming in to train our people. So that because if you have a saturation rate, and how do you react, and how do you not switch on your radar till as late as possible, and how does this information go laterally to people? How does the Army Air Defense, once it gets this information, proliferate this information to the infantryman who's there, or to the RT man who's there, so that everybody realizes there is a drone, and if he has a capability and the signals, and if he has a capability to engage that drone, how can he engage it?
So, continuing with what Ajit asked, India was getting ready with its war machinery by end of April. We knew that there's going to be some kind of a proactive measure which India is going to take.
So, it's like this, that the air defense is a defensive measure. The air defense is not an offensive. The air defense is something where you protect your own airspace. So, by a trickle method, we gradually built up our air defense right along our western borders. I think so. That's how we actually, got the troops familiar with terrain, because we initially deployed not on a VAVP centric mission that we normally do.
What does that mean?
So what happens is that normally all air defense resources, because ours is a big border, we have about 3,500 border with Pakistan. So you can't have air defense right through. So you have vulnerable points, vulnerable areas which are pre-identified, which are allocated air defense resources. Like if you have an ammunition dump, or you have an airfield, or you have a logistic base, or you have even some population centers, or you have a temple like the Golden Temple. So you predetermine where you want to put these. Now some of these could be at the border, some of these could be 50 kilometers, some of them could be in the rear areas of the tactical battle area. So what we did initially is we pushed up as much guns as far forward as possible, because we realized that the efficacy of the guns is the most important against drones.
Okay. No, but look, for Pakistan, it's a thin strip of land. So for them, the depth is not there all that much. We have a greater depth. But yet now that the drones also have a longer range. So for us, will we have to go as far back as Delhi now, Haryana, Delhi, because how far are we? So the drone range comes there also, right? So in case of a Sindoor plus situation, if it happens, will we have to have guns along nearby too?
No, so it is like this, that the air defense role has been divided between the Army, Navy and Air Force. To look after India's airspace. And while the Air Force is the primary respondent, but each of us, so the Army looks after the airspace in the rear areas, in the TBA, tactical battle area. So we look after the entire TBA. The Air Force looks after rear air defense. So major refineries, major cities like Delhi, they would all come under the gambit of the Air Force air defense. So assuming that you have an effective identification system in place, like a good radar system in place, which is capable of detecting these drones, and you have a reasonably good engagement in a couple of tiers of defense. So you have a gun system on the first tire, maybe at 3 kilometers, then you got something at 10 kilometers, and then you have a leaker which comes through. To be very unfortunate. But assuming that you have multiple tires, it is not sequential, but the best weapon takes on the drone. So I don't think there is fear to areas in depth. I think the air defense of the country, between the Air Force and us, proved that in the 2-3 days of conflict, in spite of the huge barrage of drones that came pan-western borders, we have not really had civil casualties.
But they did use not just cheap drones, they used Barak, Shapar and the others too, right? So how did we take those down?
So, it is like this, that...
And who did?
Yeah, so every weapon system, whether it's a gun or a missile, a V-SHORAD, a shoulder-fired missile, or the Akash indigenous weapon system, or the MR SAM, they all have a certain altitude of operation. So, like the guns have an altitude of between 1.8 to 2 kilometers. And then you have the V-SHORAD, the next level, go up to 3.5 kilometers. So, Then you have the Akash, which can go up to 18 kilometers. The MR-SAM, which goes up to 14 kilometers. The S400 goes up to 18 kilometers. So depending on the target which was being picked up and the cost, I mean, you realize if a plane is coming, then it's the S400. If it's an AVAX, it's an S400. If it's a smaller drone like a UCAV, then an S400 would be too expensive to use. So then you use the MR-SAM or use the Akash, and it still comes closer, then you use the gun. And so the altitude of ingress decides the best weapon system. And in an automated system like the Akash that we have currently, it's a fantastic system. It is still in the process of rolling out, but it has a system of between the ISCCS of the Air Force and the Akash of the Army. It ensures an effective resource allocation and an effective weapon allocation.
So Akash Tir is now battle proven.
So sir, now this Akash Tir and ISCCS combined together, like the controls of an S400 can be directed by an army officer, and similarly if an army Akash has to be fired at some target.
No, that's the Osaka, which is on top,
Osaka. Okay.
and there's a reporter radar below.
Okay.
But on the left hand side is your Akash in some form. That's basically a 3D TCR radar as well.
Okay.
So now sir, you can your person can ask a S400 to engage a target with integration of the command and control systems, and they can ask you to engage a target using an army Akash. Is that so?
Yeah. So as part of the CNR, the S400s is completely ICCS controlled.
Okay, sir.
Because the cost is so high, and it provides more of an area air defense. So that is predominantly with the Air Force. This time we had the Akash and all the weapons below Akash under the control of the Joint Air Defense Control Center of the Army Air Defense. Yeah, so that's where the Akash Tir is based. That's the heart of the Akash Tir system. This is the ISCCS of the air.
Yeah, this is the command where interesting picture which we had the other day, Marshal Kapoor, and we discussed this picture out there also. So this command center decides what is to be hit
And you have
where.
a similar Akash Tir command
Ours is
center.
much smaller. Ours just has 3 computer modules at each level.
Okay.
So we have rolled out Akash. In fact, the complete translation of the ICC's picture to the tactical battle area is through the Akash Tir. It's the most fantastic system where you have a centralized picture defining what is enemy targets, and it comes down. And it goes down right as far forward as the weapon end.
Okay.
So, what has it done? Just to give an example, we did a demonstration about 6 months ago in Delhi, wherein the ICCS picture from Ambala of the Air Force went to the JDC of the Army in Pathankot. And finally, it came into the command post in Delhi in the parade ground to show you and it was all in milliseconds.
What do you do? Do you close airspace during this time? What do you do?
No, you just emit your radars, you get your picture. So the Air Force has its surveillance radars coming from the front. We have our radars coming, which are smaller ranges, coming from the lower end. And this fusion takes place. It's a multi-fusion sensor fusion of data which takes place. And that's how you get a recognized air space picture. So that in that recognized picture, you're clearly told that this particular set of aircrafts are enemy aircrafts. This helicopter is an enemy helicopter. And this interrogation can take place upwards or downwards. So it's tremendously flexible. It provides great amount of latency. And the next concept that we are looking at is, while this is a centralized system, how do we look at centralization by incorporating distributed networks?
Explain.
So distributed networks is giving you a flexibility that wherever the least distance, it's a plug and play model into the automated system. So you get into a system, into the Akash Tir, plug and play it. If you have a dronal attack, it joins the system. So it's the next system. So that gives you tremendous redundancy. It gives you tremendous situational awareness. It gives you a capability to scale up your whole transmission of data. I think that's huge capability that we are looking at. And especially because drones coming in, imagine if the drone picture has to go all the way to the ISCCS and come down. Although it's in milliseconds, you can't have so much of allocation done. Well, as if the front command post does it, then he passes instructions to everybody that you got a drone attack coming in, take it on.
So the VR SAM and the QR SAM, tell me, were they used? We've seen pictures of that. So were they used? How are they used? Were they effective or not?
So the MR SAM was used, yes, definitely by the Air Force. The Pichoras were used by the Air Force. The MR SAM was also used by the Army.
When you use them, when you say you used them, it was, we don't want to know the details about where and things like that, but were you using all these systems and are they now battle ready, all these systems? It's the first time I'm presuming that in a conflict that they were used.
So, it is like this, that the rollout of the system was complete in north of Jalandhar. North of Jalandhar, the system was completely rolled out. South of Jalandhar, the system was in the process of rolling out. So wherever it was completely rolled out, it was extremely effective. Whereas in the process of rolling out, the training was also being done simultaneously with the equipment induction. And so we used the old system and the new system concurrently. So the old system was a little more time consuming. It had its time delays. The new system is absolutely in milliseconds. So we used concurrent systems to ensure transmission of data to engage.
And these are both indigenous?
The Akashseer is completely indigenous. The IACCS is completely indigenous. The DPSU Bell is the person who has integrated this whole concept pan-India. So every corps has adequate every corps has a JDC, that is a Joint Air Defense by the Army, and it has got multiple command posts at each level to take this picture right down.
Okay.
So when you brought up the question of the importance of the Akash weapon system is totally integrated. The MR SAM is totally integrated. The IGLAs, I mean the V-SHORADs couldn't actually get integrated because that is phase 2.
Okay.
We are not able to actually give this picture to the shoulder-fired launchers so far and the Zoo guns because they are fair weather systems. So till the L70 gun with the PFFC ammunition, we were able to generate as much as we could. When it came to the Zoo and the IGLA, hence the IGLA was not actually the V-SHORADs was not an integral part of the success story of this conflict.
Sir, we have talked about the success story of the indigenous weapon systems. Now the Army Air Defense is also being credited for being the slayer of the Chinese and Turkish pride, because all their drones, everything that the Pakistanis were sending, they've been defeated in a big way by the Army Air Defense and the other forces engaged in this. Can you tell us, sir, like how many of them came? Like from their side, how many drones were they sending? What types of drones? Big, small, the payloads that they were carrying, and how many, if you have any number, because it's been almost a week that this happened. So how many numbers we have destroyed, and what types, size that we have brought down in this 4-day conflict, sir?
Okay, so I'll try and put that into some perspective that, as I told you, that as far as the first wave that comes in is a saturation wave. So
that is the 7th evening, sir.
Yeah, so there would be large number of drones which fly a little low because they're trying to saturate your radars or saturate the gunner at the end. So I would say that these drones fly low and they are within the gun range and they were effectively brought down. The moment the next layer comes up, it's taken a little higher. So that so you could go up to 2 kilometers. Wherever it came into the gun range, we tried to impact it. The jammers and the EW systems also tried to impact it by jamming and by cyber spoofing or a cyber takeover. There were attempts by us. We have the capability.
And the narrative only is that the Chinese spoofed and they jammed.
No,
the international narrative. So we did it too.
We also have a capability.
We just don't boast about it.
Yeah. So we also have a capability. We also jammed, and we also did laser. We have laser systems, 7 of them, which is again indigenously developed. The IDDS and IS, that is the drone detection and interception system. The laser was also effective, but the only thing with the laser, it takes one target at a time. Yeah. So in a swarm, it becomes a little bit of a challenge because you require a certain amount of time which that beam has to, lays on that drone, which could be about 15 to 18 seconds for it to burn. So we used all these different systems to ensure. So when you talk, so the first layer I told you was, these low level, then these low level which could be even Amazon for 40,000 rupees a drone or whatever. but they were hardened to some extent. So you could it's just to saturate you.
Like I said the other day that it's the pizza delivery drones.
It could be something like that,
but you can't tell sir in the radar that ये इस drone में तो कोई payload नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है.
It's just a blip at the radar. So what does the Indian Army have? The Indian Army has, and that is what we are looking at in future also, that the radar is one method of picking up a target. If with the radar you have an electro-optical system that shows you a photograph of the target, you can actually see the target.
Okay.
So some of our air defense guns, the upgraded L-70 guns, have the EO system in place, electro-optical system. The Shilka weapon system upgraded, which did a lot of damage in this particular conflict, also has an EO system. So you have to have a number of sensors to ensure you detect the target. So the sensors that you have in contemporary conflicts today are the radar. Then you have a passive RF detector, which just detects RF emissions. Then you have the acoustic system, acoustic sensor, and you also have the the EO system. So a complementarity of these 4 sensors is very important to ensure you can detect.
How much did they learn from the Hamas conflict to send these drones? Is that kind of what the Hamas did to Israel? Is that the same tactic that they use, that just saturate us with drones?
Yeah, but in the Hamas conflict, they actually had human beings flying in and saturated their systems.
That's the first day when they did it.
Yeah.
But they've been using it for years now.
Yeah, but the saturation was not at that density. Okay. So you had about 1,300 Hamas flying in on the first day. So yeah, that saturated and created.
But subsequently, that Iron Dome is all the time it has to fight this
it has to
swarms that keep coming in.
You have to have, so hence it is very important, as I told you, to have distributed networks to be able to take on the system, because otherwise you imagine every communication system has a certain amount of bandwidth. That means it can carry so much of data of targets. Now if it is made for say 500 targets and you have suddenly 1200 targets, so you choke your systems. So I think this distributed network is a very important thing to ensure that you protect your system from being choked and being operationally effective.
When it comes to drones, what I want to know is, like, when your adversary purchases an aircraft or a submarine or something, it's an international deal. It can't be done undercover. Everybody knows that X number of aircraft have been bought or shipped or whatever. Or some guns. But when it comes to drones, nobody knows na कि कितना order किया है, क्या आ रहा है, इसमें क्या payload डाला है. So there is an element of surprise, and even these loitering munitions that everybody is talking about, वो भी नहीं पता चलता कि adversary ने कितना खरीदा है. So how does one deal with this kind of a situation?
That's a brilliant question, because it is like this, that over the years, the concept of air threat, the numbers, the quantity of aircraft, as you brought out, we knew Pakistan had so many aircraft, China had so many aircrafts. You could fly an aircraft 4 times a day. Your pilot to cockpit to aircraft ratio was so much, so you could generate so many sorties per day. So it's on the basis of this that our ammunition calculation was done. That if you have so much of quantitative and qualitative threat, how much do you cater for? But as you brought out, there is no fixed number of drones. So we've got to go back to the drawing board to understand that how much of logistic stamina that we require for such a new threat. This new threat has actually, you can't have expensive missiles. It doesn't work out that way. It's too expensive. So we've got to have systems in place which, like gun ammunition, which has a greater amount of sustainability over a period of time, because there is no quantity. As you said, you can have 5,000 drones, you can have 10,000, you can have 20,000. Now if that means you have to cater for ammunition. And I think we've got to get back to understand that how do we cater for this ammunition, because it's not quantifiable in numbers. And hence and not only that, first is the amount of ammunition, and secondly is the type of ammunition. Today, if you have you have a particular ammunition which is like a stone. So if you throw a stone at a drone, you might hit it, might not hit it. But if you throw a stone which actually fragments into small pellets or small stones, then you will get maybe 5-6 drones. So the L-70 pre-fragmented fuse cartridge is the ammunition that we used in adequate measure here. And this is the future of how to take on threat of drones is to use pre-fragmented ammunition so that as it comes close to the target, you're dead sure that if it fragments and it throws out these little splinters, you will hit a drone rather than just throw a stone directly.
This PFC rounds, that is required in large numbers. That's what you're saying, sir. Sir, you have the Akash system. You have in the army. You have the Akash. You have the MR SAM. You have the Iglas. You have the L70s. You have the Zoo 23s. You have seen. You are the DGAD, sir. So, which one of them is the hero of this conflict, sir?
I think
biggest hero. Every system is a hero, but for you, which one is the biggest hero?
No. Yeah, this is like pick your favorite child kind of question.
Yeah, but it's like this, that it is undisputable that a gun system has been extremely effective, an air defense gun system, and I think that we in the army have to thank my predecessors and the army that we, unlike other countries which started moving away from guns into the realm of missiles, the Indian army held on to its guns. And even our successor gun, which is to come up for trials in July, we realized over a period of time that the gun is an irreplaceable form of air defense. And I think whether it's the L70 or the Zoo or the Shilka or even a LMG or an MMG in ACAC role which the infantry has, is going to make a huge difference as far as drone destruction goes. So the gun is the undisputable, the air defense gun.
So these guns must have destroyed at least around 60% of the drones that Pakistan sent, sir?
Yeah, I would say that quantity would be a reasonable assumption, yes.
And what would be the total number of drones, large size, small size, medium size, that they would have sent in these 4 days, sir?
You see, so it is like this, that a drone to count numbers is a perception of the person who's given it. So maybe I would say anything between maybe 800 to 1,000 across the whole western border, yes.
In 4 days?
In 4 days, yeah, roughly.
And majority of them got destroyed?
Yeah, a large number. And one thing for sure is all the UCAV drones, which actually carried a payload, although their intent was to harm civil population and they were directed towards population centers, we ensured that they did not cause any damage. And I think the proof of the pudding is actually in what we actually saw, that there were no civilian casualties. But this is something that we've got to be very, very careful of in the years ahead, because if this is form of conflict, then our civil population areas are as important, if not more, than anybody else at the border.
So, sir, right now we have this VAVP concept of deployment. So what you're saying...
Explain. Don't use so much of terminology that people won't understand.
Ma'am, we have already explained that vital areas and points where like very important installations and offices or temples, all those things. So you think, sir, now in near future or from now on, we must start preparing for having air defense networks for say not just like suppose if we take the case of Delhi, so we should not have just air defense network for the South Block and adjoining areas, the VVIP areas, but also for population centers like say a Noida or a Gurgaon or an RK Puram or other localities.
No, it is like this, that as I told you initially, that for a drone to come so far in, it has to pass through.
No, but if we say, suppose move this example
to something closer to the border.
Closer to the border, absolutely. Say Amritsar, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is like this, that the US has a very interesting system called the CURAM. It is counter to rockets, artillery and mortars. So they have a gun which fires at about 4,500 rounds per minute. And they are largely at population centers. Okay. So they are meant to protect population centers. The Iron Dome is another concept which you spoke of. Is again, since Israel of course is small, but the Iron Dome is also a form of a population center protection.
Because all our cantonments now are around population centers. Pehle hota tha that it was a little further away. But our cities have grown and now cantonments have become right in the middle of the city. So they have become
Vulnerable.
also vulnerable, right? The civilian population is all around the cantonment area. So when you say Badami Bagh or something like that, it's or Ambala or whatever, the flyover goes over Ambala Cant. So all of them have become, or Chandi Mandir or any of these
Absolutely,
places,
ma'am,
they become vulnerable too, right? So one thing I want to talk about is the narrative war also, because now we, several days after the conflict, after the 4-day conflict, one can detect a change in what the narrative is about internationally, is about what happened, because as we are putting out more images of the destruction that was caused by our forces in Pakistan, now people are getting to know that what Pakistan had done initially was propaganda, not backed with facts. One quote which I have, which you can expand on, which says that the 4-day conflict has many defense experts say that India has entered the elite club of nations with fully integrated automated air defense command and control capability. Would you agree with this, or do you think that there are more lessons that one can learn after this 4-day conflict?
No, I think that I think there's tremendous work in progress that is required. While we have been successful in taking on this current challenge, but we've got to be able to detect drones in far greater numbers. We've got to have a detection system in place.
Shield, detect, take down.
Yeah. So absolutely right. So you've got to have a detection system. You've got to have what do you call it? After detection, you must be able to identify that it is an enemy drone, and then you must be able to proliferate this information to destroy it as much fast as possible. I think that is something that we've got to work on, so that you can make sure that you bring them down in as many numbers that come, and a very, very minuscule number, if any, get across. If you've got couple of layers.
Okay.
So I think that's very important, that we don't rest on what we've achieved. We've got to take it ahead. We've got to have the Akash Tir play out. Akash Tir is largely has not been configured in the drone domain, the drone warfare domain. So you've got to look at how does drones management systems work. So that the Akash Tir is largely for aircrafts, helicopters, and for UAVs of bigger types like the Searcher and the Heron and the TB2 and all that. But when you talk about smaller drones, the system has just been put through its first test. But we got to strengthen it. We got to have greater amount of sensors involved in it. We got to have types of sensors involved in it, and then be able to disseminate this information as quickly as possible, so that our interdiction and destruction of this threat is as far forward as possible.
Is the adversary doing the same? Would be.
I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure. After all, if you see today between Russia and Ukraine, this catch-up game is on a daily basis. So you find one day the Russians claim a huge success with their drone capability, then the Ukraine comes in with some newer capability. So you just see in the matter of the last 8 months how conflict has changed. You had drones which were on simple industrial, scientific and medical frequencies. The moment that was being taken down by jammers, then you had autonomous drones which would know where to fly. Then you had tethered drones which would have a cable taking them up. Then you had 3D printed drones which had the terrain which was mapped, which would fly as per that. So you just see how the phenomenal evolution of drones has taken place. And in the counter...
Within a year or two, that's it.
Absolutely.
Usually it takes weapon systems, it takes a time to figure out what is it that can go wrong, what can be done, what modifications need to be done. But this is something that even the private sector has woken up to the challenge, right?
And you see how Starlink has changed the whole Ukrainian battle. So I think that's it's very important that while this development takes place, how does the counter to this play out? It has to also move as quickly as possible. And I think that we've got to be a little flexible in procuring the counters, because otherwise you'll be a little behind of the curve.
Okay. One controversy which happened over the weekend, now that I have you, I'll give it back to you soon. Now that I have you here, I need to know about this because this broke out yesterday. One is about the mission statement. What were we intending to do? What targets did we want? And then this happened, sir, which was Rahul Gandhi, leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, tweeted, informing Pakistan at the start of our attack was a crime. EM, which is External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, he's publicly admitted, he said, that the government of India did it. Who authorized it? Now, he put this tweet out, which was a reaction to Mr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, in case for foreign audiences who
At the start of the operation, we had sent a message to Pakistan saying we are striking at terrorist infrastructure, we are not striking at the military, so the military has an option of standing out and not interfering in this process. They chose not to take that good advice.
Now, here what has happened is what the External Affairs Minister was saying at the start of the operation did not mean that before the operation. This was after we hit the first targets, which was the terrorist camp, and then they were informed. Now, obviously, Mr. Gandhi is interpreting at the start of the campaign is what he meant was that at Operation Sindoor before it was launched, right? And then, the government put out the DGMO who had in his
being
briefing.
well aware and familiar with the congenital and impulsive nature of our adversary, and even though we did attempt to reach out and communicate our compulsions to strike at the heart of terror to my counterpart in the immediate wake of Operation Sindoor, the request was brusquely turned down, with an intimation that a severe response was inevitable and in the offing. We were, of course, prepared. Operations on the 7th and the 8th, Air Marshal Bharti spoken about.
So basically, we were all at these briefings and press conferences. Ajit was there too. So what had happened was that the DGMO briefing, the other briefings, everybody told us the sequence, which is that the strikes happened on the terror targets. Subsequently, the Indian defense told their DGMO that this is what we're doing. DGMO did not respond. Said, do you want to talk? Do you want to? DGMO did not respond and said instead that we'll be striking back. They struck back. After which we struck the second day, which was we took out their air bases and the air defense, whatever they had, all the targets that were there. This was the sequence. But somewhere the confusion occurs is when, at what point. Now, what is the SOP out here? Does the Indian defense mechanism ever tell the adversary, tell the enemy that this is what we're going to strike? Does that happen?
I think that for any conflict to be successful, surprise is the greatest element. And the very fact that, we got 100 terrorists, if not more, in their respective places where the camps were. I mean, that itself gives you an answer. If this was so clearly enunciated before that I'm coming and I'm going to target your terrorist camps, then they would have been empty.
Like it had happened, what they claim happened in Balakot.
So the very fact that we got big names. I mean, the very fact that we got big names in the terrorist, Pak terrorist hierarchy only tells you that the matter of surprise was at its highest. And I think that's the way I would, that's the takeaway, that, if there was any pre-information and also telling somebody that you're coming for the terrorist camps, then they would have been empty.
Let's come to the objectives. What was the mission? What were you told has to be done?
Well, as an DG-AD, I was told to provide air defense. But if you look at it in the broader context, I was told to protect our airspace. But I'm sure the forces that were told to respond proportionately in as minimum collateral damage being provided, no harm to civil population or religious places, so that what caused us pain, what caused 26 families pain, if not more, directly or indirectly, that is actually avenged.
Pakistan has said that they used their Chinese fighter jets. They have said it openly. China is, of course, boasting about it. And, till recently, international media reports were always that Chinese technology is reverse technology. Their aircraft was a butt of all jokes, whether in America or Europe, from the defense manufacturers to the media reports and all. But now they have managed to, come out in this smiling in the narrative, saying that our J-10s were fabulous. What do you have to say to that?
I think that if you see the Chengdu aerospace company stock value, the way it has gone down, I think that would give you an answer.
Okay, and Dassault went up despite the fact
And
that...
sir, like if they are saying, and they were on the in the initial period, they were even flying the JF-17s, J-10s, and the Chinese aircraft. Were we able to, as air defense, were we able to hit any of them, sir? The aircraft,
So
bigger size or smaller size?
It is like this, that I'm sure Pakistan as a nation is well aware of the capability our air defense has. It is well aware of the capability of our Indian Air Force. It is well aware of our capability of our EW systems. And hence, flying in depth was not going to give them any major benefit. So, in my perception, that they really didn't fly too much. The very fact that they were using civilian aircrafts to fly international and national carriers only tells you that they were trying to ensure that, knowing our nation doesn't harm anybody from a civilian in any form, they knew we wouldn't try and shoot down their aircrafts, even if they were behind the Pakistan international carriers or the national carrier of Pakistan. In spite of conflict, the first thing that you do in conflict is to make sure that your airspace is closed for national and international flights. But they never let that happen. They let these flights fly. And I think that's a very major lesson that we've got to take away. That imagine what would have happened to their people. I think the restraint showed by the Indian armed forces and the Air Force, we had, if we wanted to be as aggressive as we could be, and we brought down a Pakistan international carrier, a national aircraft with civilians on board, I mean, that would have been criminal.
Was there an opportunity like that a fighter aircraft, could you see a Pakistani fighter flying behind a civilian carrier, and you allowed them to move away or go away? Was there an opportunity?
No, I'm just saying that this was I'm trying to bring out the thought process of Pakistan as a state.
To move its civilian aircraft.
That's what I'm trying to bring. I'm trying to bring out that you moved your civilians indirectly, as for whatever purpose. I mean, why
even though NOTAM was on.
Yeah, NOTAM for them was not on. I mean, they had to decide to close their airspace, which they didn't do. They should have closed their airspace.
Wasn't it on for Pakistan too at that?
No, Pakistan, that is for the government of that country to issue.
Did they issue or
no? No, they did not.
That is the huge issue. And that is why the Indian government brought this out, that Pakistan civil airlines were flying. And the first thing you do when there is this type of threat is that you close your airspace.
It was closed, right? All international carriers were not flying over Pakistan.
I said national and Pakistan carriers.
Their international.
Yeah. So doesn't the world look into this matter? Like, which means that suppose a PIA flight is flying from Venice to Islamabad. I'm just randomly saying. Why will they allow their citizens to sit in a PIA aircraft, knowing that Pakistan International Airlines can fly in a conflict zone? Doesn't that matter to the world?
I think it tells you about a mindset. I think that's what we should look at.
And sir,
it's not a military mindset, right, sir? To put a civilian in front of you. Like,
we never do it. The moment this thing happened, we ensured that our civil population was protected. 32 airfields were under NOTAM.
The reason I'm asking you is that you have to know the mind of your enemy, right? As a forge, you need to know the mind of your enemy. If your enemy is not behaving like a uniformed military army is supposed to behave, it's behaving more like a jihadi army, which is using a civilian front. Even the terrorist targets, if you see the target that we hit in Bawalpur or in Muridke, they had their terrorist training camp, and outside they had a mosque and a public health center. So now you're talking in terms of it's a military jihadi complex, and so your enemy is not just a military, is not just a uniform military, right? So do you get to understand that that mindset where they can do that? Is that how you got to see?
I think the best way to describe this is irrationality.
Which is more dangerous?
It's extremely dangerous. Irrationality is a very dangerous form of warfare, because that's why their targets were civilian populations, religious centers. I mean, that's irrational.
So it's a grey war. We fought. The 4-day conflict is a grey war that we fought. Would you say that?
No, it was a war. But I think that, it's irrationality, insensitivity. Insensitivity is another aspect, which is they are insensitive towards certain things. You're being irrational and you're insensitive.
Do you watch your, do you need to understand the mindset of the guy in charge there, General Munir? Do you do a psychoanalysis of your enemy at that time? Because you got to predict what he's doing, right? That's a major thing that Fauj is supposed to do. इसकी दूसरी तरफ जो बैठा हुआ है, जो कर रहा है आपके ऊपर अटैक, उसका मानसिक स्थिति कैसे है? How are they going to plan their next move? You got to know that. Do you do that kind of?
Yeah, so it's fascinating again. There is a very interesting concept called red teaming. It's a very interesting concept. So the US uses it. Israel used it to some extent. We have started using red teaming, wherein whenever we decided to do something, within our own group of people, we had a red team which would challenge why we did it, would tell us what they anticipated would be the mindset of the opposition. So the red team would actually look at the IW, the psychological, the impact of civil population in unrest, and it would tell you the impact of your ops as to how it would fan out. And I think red teaming actually teaches you this. It's a fascinating concept which challenges whatever action you're going to do, to able to understand what can be the outcomes of that action, so that you know what to be prepared for in the next phase if you take this action. And this is what happens in the army today. We've started it recently under the present chief of army staff, where and even during the last chief, this concept of red teaming came out. And we are now following this red teaming. Effectively, in this particular campaign, we did use the concept of red teaming.
Okay.
Sir, we have seen a lot of videos have come from Pakistan that where we can see them firing ballistic missiles from populated areas. Like I can never imagine that in India I'll be moving out in my car and seeing some army guys firing missiles from a truck. So, is that also a new lesson from this war that to avoid retaliation from Indian forces, they may even go to population areas, fire from there and then hide somewhere? Isn't it something like what happens in Israel-Hamas conflict, where they fire from the Hamas terrorists, fire from populated areas, then hide in the same houses, hospitals, and then act as if nothing has happened, and then when hit they claim, when civilians die they claim victimhood.
Yeah. So it's something that we've grown up learning, that whenever you fire an effective weapon, you're liable to be detected, and hence after you shoot, you scoot, and you move into something called a hide, which is pre-planned and pre-designated. So our forces, whenever we fire, not to be getting, you'll immediately get a counter-attack in that particular with the weapon locating radar. So the first thing we do is after we fire, we go to a hide. And a hide is nowhere near a population center. It's in a proper predetermined camouflage place, so that you protect your weapon system and you protect your crew. But this is something that, yes, Pakistan gets into population centers. I mean, what do you do? Just one of those things. It's a concept that we are seeing now, and it's a concept that we are aware of, and we've got to think as how we're going to deal with this in future.
So after we hit Chaklala and things, there's now in the Pakistani media there's a lot of talk that there's a rethinking in the Pakistan Fauj that they may need to move out of Pindi because it's too close to the border. They may need to move safer zone. But then the problem also occurs is because of their geography. Where will they move? How much can they move away from the border? It all comes within the range. And I think another thing which people find fascinating is that we did not attack anything in KPK. We didn't attack anything in Balochistan. So that also is playing a lot on the minds of the Pakistan people, which is reflected in the media. That look at them. They're making us talk about moving out from Pindi, from GHQ, moving the GHQ further away, and at the same time they have made it clear that हम बलोचिस्तान पे अटैक नहीं करेंगे, हम KPK पे नहीं अटैक करेंगे.
No, I just like to say that India has an adequate arsenal of weapons to take on Pakistan right across its depth. So from its broadest to its narrowest, wherever it is, the whole of Pakistan is within range of. So we are absolutely capable from our borders or even in depth, where we can take on the entire Pakistan. And the GHQ can move from Rawalpindi to KPK or wherever they want to move, but they are all within range.
Okay.
So they'll have to really find a deep hole. Yeah, something really deep.
And even not just our striking range, sir, even our defending range is wider than Pakistan, with the S-400 coming in 400 kilometers plus. So that's not the...
Did you see the entire crowd in India? Everybody on social media, S-400 का है. कहाँ है S-400 का picture? कहाँ है? Where did we strike? How many more? And then there's a very famous YouTuber of Pakistan who yesterday put out a video in which saying, भाई हमको भी सोचना पड़ेगा, ये S-400 तो हमको भी खरीदना पड़ेगा. So there's this admission that they need to widen their purchase. They're very upset. You know, initially they were upset कि हमारे YouTube बंद हो गया. We can't put out content. दूसरा, when, you know, धड़ाधड़ every 4 hours there are, pictures coming out from our forge where we are showing now the visuals. So tell me about that. The impact of this time in this 4-day conflict, of all the imagery that has come out. So everything backed with facts. How much does that play? How much impact does that have on the forces also? We know the impact it has on our people, but what is the impact on your men and women who are in the field, and on the enemy?
So it's like this, that our job is to protect our sovereignty, our people, and if we've been able to ensure that no harm has come anywhere, I think it's tremendous satisfaction for the defense services of the country. I mean, all the forces together. That, it's just unfortunately 5 soldiers who lost their lives, and it's very unfortunate that it happened in this whole conflict. So I think that the very fact that we've been able to protect our motherland from this onslaught, which was aimed at causing a lot of problems in population centers and in our cantonments. I mean, the very fact that we've given this reassurance to our people, not only to our civil population, but let me tell you that a lot of our own Jawans, officers' wives were staying in cantonments. And they were also equally concerned about these drone attacks. And the very fact that we ensured that this did not manifest in any casualty, I'm sure it not only made the soldier feel proud, it made the families feel proud, and finally the population of India feel proud. I think that's the takeaway.
Another thing which people have is like, itni jaldi kyun khatam kiya? Lots of people saying, why did we end it so quickly? And why we all the time saying, we hit because you were going to hit us? Why is this? Why does the Indian army always have this defensive posture, that we are a defensive army?
I think that the way India is growing as a nation, it's a responsible nation. It realizes that with economic growth comes a certain amount of responsibility, and with that responsibility we put restraint on ourselves. And I think that's the major takeaway. It's not that why did we stop. I think responsible nations, progressive nations, economically stronger nations put self-imposed restraint so that we know when to put a halt to things.
Okay.
Sir, I just wanted to ask you about your Corps of Army Air Defense, sir. Now, I've been covering defense for last 22 years, sir. AD was never at the forefront of war. AD was considered कि हाँ ये भी आएंगे, इनका भी बहुत रोल होता है. It was all the so and so corps will cut Pakistan into half.
Infantry.
Armored, RT, that they deliver death from a distance and all that. Now, ADs, everybody is talking about how strong our AD is. How is the feeling as the DG of the Army Air Defence, sir? And how do you see the role expanding in near future, and how the importance of AD has gone up, sir, within the organization?
Yeah, so I think that while Army Air Defence was always looked as an important combat support arm of the army, but we always felt that the decisive factor would be with the armored corps and the artillery and the mechanized at some stage, but with population densities having increased, with obstacle-ridden terrain having increased, and with an RMA, a revolution in military affairs, bringing in drones and changing the concept of air threat, I think that the Army Air Defence or the air defence has undergone a whole, a rethink as to how this threat will manifest. And I think that is how Army Air Defence is. The people have realized that without a strong air defence, I mean, if you can't protect your own airspace, then if this is safe, then you can go ahead and achieve what you want beyond that. So the roles are very defined, but I think this particular change in drones and UAVs and whatever UCAVs has brought into the fore that air defence and EW make a huge battle-winning combination wherever you want to field them.
It's the government called it an impenetrable wall. The statement was India's air defence systems, combining assets from the Army, Navy and primarily the Air Force, performed with exceptional synergy. These systems created an impenetrable wall, foiling multiple attempts by Pakistan to retaliate. So it's a lot of responsibility also on you now, because we are still in Operation Sindoor is still on. So to keep that impenetrable wall still stationary and working, जैसे बुलंद दरवाजा जैसे कहते हैं, to keep that on is a great responsibility still.
Yeah, so we are continuously looking at where are the possible gaps, what could be our vulnerabilities, which particular part should we strengthen, how should we deploy and strengthen that particular aspect. So, it's work in progress. It's improvement in progress. It puts a greater responsibility as the Director General of Air Defence to be able to reassure the people of our country that we are there to ensure that, I don't know about an impenetrable wall, but we'll try and do as much as we can to ensure the protection of our motherland and the airspace is protected.
Sir, lastly, I want to ask you, sir. We talked about the religious places that the Pakistanis were trying to hit. Golden Temple was one where they were trying to hit. Now, in north of Amritsar is Vaishno Devi. Now, was there any attempt to hit there also, and was that well protected by AD, sir? And any other significant?
I have not really heard, but wherever there was a possible religious sensitivity involved, we had deployed protection. Wherever there was a possible religious sensitivity involved of any community, we ensured that there was a certain amount of protection. But specifically, whether a particular religious place other than the Golden Temple was targeted or not, I wouldn't be able to comment. It's too early.
So last question is that we've seen pictures of the Pakistan Army opening relationship negotiations with Bangladesh, prior to Operation Sindoor earlier. We've seen that happening. Do you see this bloodied army now using that sector, the airfields there? Are we going to be talking about building this impenetrable wall of air defense on that side too? Because Bangladesh could be used as a fertile ground to attack us from there.
So I think that we analyze our vulnerabilities at regular intervals. We look at how do we take on threats and how they're going to manifest. And we're definitely looking at how do we strengthen wherever our vulnerabilities lie. So whether it's in the form of stronger surveillance measures, a stronger detection capability, and a better engagement ability. So this is an ongoing process.
Okay.
And as threats manifest in whichever form, wherever they come out from, you have actually to, the best way is to be able to visualize them. That's what we are paid for. Visualize the threat and plan how to mitigate, if not reduce, that threat.
Right. On that note, thank you so much and wishing you all the best for the future.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's been a pleasure meeting you for the first time, and of course speaking to Ajit and you. It's wonderful that you actually captured the fervor of the Indian population and the people of India as you spoke to me.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for watching or listening to this edition of the NR podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you have seen this or heard this. Namaste. Jai Hind. This episode is powered by easemytrip.com. Click here to watch the previous episodes.